Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this seminar and thank you for attending. I'm Redha Shafira and what I'm going to talk about today is students' difficulties in learning vocabulary. So my objective is to find out kinds and factors of students' difficulties in learning vocabulary, as we know that many students have difficulties in learning vocabulary. Okay, so there are several points that I want to talk about today. The first one is introduction, and then literature review, and next methodology, and then result and discussion, and the last is conclusion. Okay, let's start with the introduction. So vocabulary plays important role in language learning. Vocabulary is also essential in learning a language, to speak, write, to listen, and to read. Without vocabulary, people cannot communicate or express their feeling, both written or spoken. Okay, so without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. So if someone has a good grammar, but without many vocabularies, so it useless. And then people, especially students who learn English, often find difficulties in learning vocabulary. So that's why in this research, the researcher wants to know to investigate the students' difficulties in and factors causing the difficulties in learning vocabulary. Okay, the next is literature review. There are several points that I want to talk about in literature review. The first one is what is vocabulary, and then the importance of vocabulary, and next process of vocabulary, and next types of vocabulary, and the last is difficulties in vocabulary. Okay, let's start with what is vocabulary. Okay, so the vocabulary is a core component of language. As Ricards and Renandia state that vocabulary is core component of language proficiency and provides much of the basis how to speak, to listen, to read, and to write. So without extensive vocabulary, people may be difficult to achieve their potential in learning a language. And then vocabulary is a list or set of words. As H. M. Brown state that vocabulary refers to a list or set of words for a particular language that the individual might use. And then vocabulary is also the central to second language acquisition. As McCarthy stated that without words to express a wider range of meanings, communication in second language cannot happen in any meaningful way. Okay, now we come to the importance of vocabulary. So, vocabulary is very important in learning a language for people who learn English as a foreign language and also as a second language. Okay, so vocabulary is an important aspect of language, second language, and foreign language acquisition, and also the vital in to reading comprehension and proficiency. And then vocabulary is the basis for the development of all other skills. Okay, so as I said before that without vocabulary, the people may be difficult to achieve their potential, especially in writing, reading, speaking, and listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the types of vocabulary. So there are two types of vocabulary. The first one is productive vocabulary. Okay, so the productive vocabulary is words that are well known, familiar, and used frequently. Okay, so a productive vocabulary is a words that an individual can use when writing or speaking. Okay, the second one is receptive vocabulary. This is a set of words that individual can use when listening or reading. So this is a word that less well known and less frequent in use. Typically, the receptive vocabulary, uh, also the word the individual do not use spontaneously. Well, we comes to the next is process of learning vocabulary. There are four process of learning vocabulary. They are discrimination, understanding meaning, remembering, and consolidation of meaning. Okay, so let me elaborate on them. The first one is discrimination. Okay, so this is the basic step of learning vocabulary. Uh, it is involves distinguish sounds, letters from those next to them, and from the sounds and letters similar sounds or the similar words when listening and reading. And then the next one is understanding the meaning. This means understanding the concept of the foreign language or phrase or words, and this is often a straightforward because the word can be related to its reference by direct association because there is an equivalent word in English. And then the next is remembering. So this is to ensure its retention. Once learners have found out the meanings of a word, they have no reason to attend to it anymore, and it will be forgotten. And the last one is consolidation of meaning. Uh, Learning new words is not instantaneously a processes in it were. And if a presentation were the only critical variable involved, the words would not be forgotten and need to be relearned. So it seems that the words are absorbed slowly over time. So it may be difficult to students to remember or to memorize many vocabularies. Okay, the next one we comes to the difficulties in learning vocabulary. So there are several difficulties in learning vocabulary. The first one is similarity to uh, first language. Okay, so the difficulty of vocabulary items often depend on how similar the first language uh, to the items of the vocabulary. So, the words which are similar in the first language and English may be misleading rather than helpful. Okay, the next one is connotation. Uh, this is positive or negative connotation. That means the words have positive or negative connotation to a native speaker. For example, like skinny and slim. This is could be used to describe someone, but these words are very different in their connotation. And by choosing one rather than the other, the speaker conveys a particular attitude. Okay, the next one is spelling and pronunciation. The spelling of many English can cause problems for students who speak a language with a very regular spelling system. Okay, so particular spelling patterns can also cause confusion where the pronunciation is concerned. For example, it's easy to students to understand um, why many students confuse the meaning, spelling, and pronunciation of the word like true, uh, thought, 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 and throw. Okay, and the last is multi-word items. Uh, Many lexical items consist of more than one word. For example, like tennis shoes or a sport car. So it may be difficult for students to memorize vocabulary like that. Multi-word items is also usually known as compound noun. Okay, the next point is methodology. So in this research, use a descriptive qualitative method. So in this research, the researchers investigate the students' difficulties in learning vocabulary. So that's why the researcher use descriptive. That means the researcher describe what is the difficulties that may be faced by the students. And then the next is instrument. In this research, the researcher used questionnaire and interview. Okay, so both questionnaire and interview were done to know kind and factors students' difficulties in learning vocabulary. The next one is population. The population of this research is the first semester of English education department at IAIN Raden Intan Lampung. And then the sample is one class consists of 36 students. The sample, the researcher used cluster random sampling. That means that the researcher used the sample randomly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the result and the discussion of this research. So, based on the result of this research, the students have difficulties in pronouncing the words, how to write and spell, how to use in grammatical patterns correctly. So almost all of the students have difficulties and pronouncing the words, especially if the words is similar in sounds, and then the different grammatical form of a word uh, is also the difficulties may that faced by the students. And then the students found difficulties in choosing the appropriate meaning of the words. So there are students difficult to choose the correct meaning of the words because as I said that many words that have a similar sound or similar words. So that's why the students may difficult to choose what is the correct meaning of an word. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So uh, I have explained. So what I can conclude that the factors that cause students difficulties in learning vocabulary is the first one, the written form is different from spoken form in English. And then The number of words to learn is too large, so there are many vocabulary that students have to remember or memorize. So it is one of the difficulties that students face in learning vocabulary. And then uh, the limitation of sources. Also, the limitation of sources of the words, also the cause of why students difficult to learn vocabulary. And then the complexity of a word knowledge. So knowing a word involves much more than knowing the dictionary meaning. And then lack of understanding the grammatical of words. And the last is the incorrect pronunciation. So the incorrect pronunciation is caused by the lack of sound similarity between English and the student's native language. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I have explained to you the several points. There is introduction in this research and then literature review. And in the literature review also discuss several points. There is what is vocabulary, and then the importance of vocabulary, and then types of vocabulary, and then the difficulties in learning vocabulary. Okay, and then I also have explained the methodology of this research, and then the result and discussion, and the last is I have concluded to you. Okay, so I think that's all. Uh, any questions? All right, I think no. So if there is no question, I think that's all for today's seminar. Thank you for your attending to this seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.